This is a bizarre story that happened when I was 16. I never knew my grandparents. They both passed before I was even born, but there was always a little piece of them in my home growing up. My mother, their daughter, kept a couple of souvenirs that belonged to them in our living room. They were two ornamental bears made of china, one brown, one white. Other than their different colors, they were identical. I never liked the things myself. There was something uncanny about them. Their eyes always seemed a little too real for me. Not like bear eyes at all. Too much white in them. Too much humanness, if that makes sense. But that was neither here nor there. There were of course other things in our home that reminded my mother of her parents, but those two bears always stood out to me, as they were always displayed proudly on the window ledge. Apparently, my grandparents were really great people. My whole family agree that I would have adored them. One night, I remember having a really vivid dream about those two bears. So vivid, in fact, that it still burned into my mind all these years later. In the dream, I'm laying on an operating table in a hospital ER, completely alone and confused. There's no sound whatsoever, just total silence. Even my own movements are inaudible. In the dream, I managed to stand up and go for the door. I clutch the handle, but something stops me. I turn back to look at the table I just got up from. It's red, and there are tools scattered all over the floor around it. And something else. On the now stained red table are two familiar objects. The brown and white bears, their pale, human-like eyes staring into what felt like my very soul. It was horrible, like one of those dreams where you can feel the pain and terror. I felt a burning in my chest that wouldn't go away, the true definition of a nightmare. Inexplicably, one of the bears moves to the edge of the table and falls, breaking into 1,000 pieces without a sound. That's where the dream ended. I woke up a few days later in the hospital. I hadn't been dreaming in my bed at home at all. I'd actually been in an operating theatre. The setting for the dream itself had been real. The surgeons only barely managed to save me, and apparently they lost me for a minute before bringing me back to life. Apparently I'd been in a car wreck. My girlfriend Rebecca had been in the vehicle with me. Her father was driving. The crash was real bad. Neither of them made it. Unbeknownst to me, this had all happened on prom night. I don't remember anything about my prom. Not how I got there, what I did, who I saw. Only the stories that were told to me after the fact. The crash had wiped that night clean out of my mind. A few people said they saw me get into the car with Rebecca's father at the end of the evening. A toxicology report later revealed that our old man had been drinking when he came to pick us up. He always seemed like such a level-headed and responsible guy, so I'll never understand that. While driving me back to my place, he swerved over into the wrong lane and hit another vehicle head-on. Luckily, the driver in that car was okay, though he too came close to losing his life. Thankfully, there were some amazing surgeons on call that night. The strangest part of this story, however, came after I was well enough to go home. I got myself discharged, and my mother drove me back to our house. I, of course, was a little nervous about getting back into a car after hearing what had happened, but I managed to set those fears aside. We go inside, and I make my way into the living room. There's only one of the ornamental bears on the window ledge, the brown one. The white one's nowhere to be seen. I asked my mum why she had moved it. "Oh," she told me, "it's the strangest thing. The white one just fell from the ledge and shattered. No idea how." Obviously, she had had no reason to tell me about this while I was in hospital. Her mind was on other matters, like my recovery, and I hadn't told her about the dream I had had while in the operating theatre. She went on to tell me that it smashed the night I went to prom. I put two and two together and finally confided in her about my dream. This all happened 10 years ago. I've mostly gotten over the trauma, though I still get the occasional flashback and feelings of survivor's guilt. I can't help but feel I was somehow being protected that night by two relatives I'd never even had the pleasure of meeting. My grandparents. Even now, my mother and I sometimes catch ourselves looking at that lonely, brown ornamental bear on the living room window ledge, and, half-jokingly, say that I've still got one spare life left if I ever need to use it. Recently, a buddy of mine was clearing out some old house that had been abandoned for years. While inside the attic, he came across a USB which really stood out to him. Everything else in the house was old and decrepit, but the USB was obviously modern, not from the same time as all the other stuff in there. Like somebody, other than the previous homeowners, had come in and left it there. Hammerman, or one word, was written on it. Nothing else seemed out of place or unordinary. For whatever reason, he decided to pocket the thing and take it home with him. After he looked at what was on the flash drive, he called me up and invited me around to his place. Said he had something I had to see. Now, together, we sat looking at his computer screen as he opened up the USB drive. There was just one large file stored on it. A video. "I need your opinion about what to do, man. I can hardly believe what's on this thing," my friend said to me. I could tell from his tone and expression that although he wanted to show me what was on it, he was also nervous and uncomfortable. "Go ahead, click on it," I said. He obliged. I'll describe what I saw now, but believe me, it's not for the faint of heart. Almost made me lose my damn faith in humanity. The video looked to have been filmed on a phone camera. It was actually several videos, all taken at different times and edited together, like a compilation or highlights reel. It started with a man in the back of a truck. He wore a mask to cover his face. In his hand was a hammer. He's laughing with the guy who's holding the camera, but they were speaking in a language I couldn't understand. It sounded like Russian, but I can't be sure. The vehicle they're traveling in comes to a screeching halt. The masked man quickly opens up the truck's sliding door and jumps out. The cameraman follows closely behind him. Walking alone down some lonely country road was a man, maybe in his early 30s, I'd say. He looked shocked and confused as the masked man ran up to him. Before he even realized what was about to happen, the guy with the hammer lifts it up and slams it down on the guy's head. It was as graphic as you can imagine. The unsuspecting guy drops to the ground and starts twitching. There's a big dent in his head, captured by the cameraman. And the masked man and the camera holder quickly jump back inside their truck, which starts driving off immediately. They laugh along with the driver. The video quickly cuts to another scene of the masked man, again jumping out the back of a truck. This time, there was a middle-aged woman walking along some woody country path. The masked man runs up to her at full speed. She has time to scream, but nothing more. Before she can even raise her arm to protect herself, she's hit in the head by the hammer. Movement. The men, again, run back to their vehicle and drive off, laughing and joking. There were 7 more clips like that. In each of them, the masked man lunged from the van at some single person who had no idea what was in store for them. He hits them all in the head, and they all drop to the ground, pools of red spurting out of them. The sound of all the thumps from the hammer were enough to make you want to puke. To think that these people just woke up one morning and figured it was just going to be an ordinary day, only for this to happen to them out of the blue, makes you realize how unpredictable life can be when there's maniacs like this out there. Anyway, I don't know exactly what this video was, when it was made, or where it came from, but it seemed to me like a group of madmen who just drove around lonely country roads, looking for innocent people to strike with a hammer. No rhyme or reason to it. I have no idea how it came to be in that abandoned house, nor do I know the fate of all the people in the video. From what I saw, I wouldn't say any of them survived. My friend agreed to call the authorities and give them the USB. As far as I know, nothing's come of it yet. Hope they catch the guy and his accomplices who filmed it and drove him around.